a clear appreciation of the opportunities life has offered him and his family, right down to that quaint name he took as an 11-year-old. A name that will live on as belonging to one of the truly great Australians of the 20th century.
It's a very unusual name where the two words flow very well together. They flow well together. I've been up through the South Pacific, all up through the Solomons and parts of New Guinea, where some of the people were having trouble reading English. But when the name Slim Dusty goes up in print, it's very easily recognised and remembered. And I think it's a name that sinks into people's minds. As a kid, the great lettering of the great words Tex Morton seemed to sink into my mind as a very flamboyant, which he was, a very flamboyant character. And I think the name Slim Dusty sort of stands out in print. So I think that's been a big help. Slim Dusty walks on stage, not David Gordon Kirkpatrick. And all through the career, that's the way it's been.
Do you think that's been the great leveller for you, the fact that you've been able to go and enjoy Star Trek at home on your video when you feel like it, as DGK rather than Slim?
Absolutely. I mean, at home, we have quite a lot of land on the North Shore. We've got bantams, we've got caravans, we've got fruit trees, and it's more or less a bit like Ma and Pa Kettle, the way Joy and I flounder around with our space. People said, why doesn't Slim develop all this land? Well, no way, because that's the grandkids come and they play football and they play cricket. So DGK flounders around there and has a great time. And at the moment, phone calls arrive. Somebody says there's a gig to do tomorrow night. It's belt and buckle. On goes the hat. DGK steps down and SD takes it over.
Yeah. And that's, do you think, has been part of the strength of you being able to carry on for so long and still retain your enthusiasm for everything?
Well, I still really believe in the Australian image, and being Slim Dusty has been a part of that feel. And I mean, I'm still very excited. I'm still writing a lot of music. I'm always very interested in recording. So, Slim Dusty still ploughs on into the next century.
In the early 1970s, Slim's popularity skyrocketed. After nearly 20 years of touring the country, he settled in Sydney and did a lot more promotional work, which boosted his status and his record sales. As Slim became more available to the media, we began to get more details of his fascinating story, which began in the Nulla Valley west of Kempsey on the New South Wales north coast, where two youngsters fulfilled their childhood dream to sing on the radio and then on record. But they couldn't possibly do it as Gordon Kirkpatrick and Bobby Haberfield.
I thought of the great title. I mean, Gordon Kirkpatrick was no good as a name, so I decided to call myself Buddy Bluebird, because we had Tex Morton, we had young Buddy Williams then, and of course it's amazing when I look back on the old days as a young boy on the farm. All the local singers, they were either a Buddy or a Tex, you know. So anyway, I became a Buddy, and anyway, Shorty was taken in with the spirit of the partnership, so he called himself Buddy Blackbird. Now, the names lasted a few months. I think I decided first that the Buddy part of the name wasn't very good. To me, I think the name sounded too much like kid names, you know. Now, there was one thing, however, that I was quite sure about, that when I became Buddy Bluebird at that time, I never wanted to be Gordon Kirkpatrick. I just wanted another name. So I felt back in those days I'd like something to be a little bit Australian, more Australian. So I'm not sure how it ever came into my mind, but it just came off the top of my head, I suppose. And I thought, well, Slim was a good name, good sort of cowboy name. And then Dusty, well, Australia is known as a dusty country, so it was Dusty, something, as they say, as Australian as a blowfly. But the lucky thing is, I suppose, that Slim Dusty rolls off the tongue, and Slim Dusty looks good in print. So it just happened as simple as that, just off the top of the head. So anyway, then Bobby, or Shorty as I call him now, well, he took the name Shorty Slim, but that was a bit too tangled up, so he eventually became Shorty Ranger, a name which he's performed under ever since. It may be hard for some people to understand, but when I took the name, and I had it in mind that I became Slim Dusty, and Gordon Kirkpatrick became another person. Now, Gordon Kirkpatrick was somebody I really hadn't liked being, but Slim Dusty was a new person, and was a new person I could create. And to me, it meant freedom and a chance to leave the past behind. So I didn't think much of myself or my chances at the beginning, you know. But just taking the name gave me more self-confidence, and somehow it changed my personality. And at that particular time, I was the ripe old age of 11 years old.
An extract from Slim's first book, Walk a Country Mile, published in 1979. From that book, we came to realise that Slim's distinctive style of hat came into being before 1946. He began cutting independent records in 1942 and started building a fan base with them and with a songbook he published. Slim's distinctive style of hat appeared on the cover of that songbook.
The cover of the album shows a chubby-faced kid with his mouth hanging in a sort of a flytrap pose and a hat with the front turned down, shading the eyes. Now, the turned-down hat has become such a large part of the way the public sees me that it has its own negative qualities. But if I don't want to be recognised in the street, I can virtually guarantee it by leaving the hat at home and putting on a pair of large sunglasses or something like that. Now, in the first years when I was trying to break into country music, or cowboy music in the old days, we'd had lots of names, hillbilly music, everything, but I wanted to wear a cowboy hat just like anybody else. But when I tried them on, I realised that for some reason they never looked quite right. I think the idea was I had a round face and the rolled up, the curled up hat sort of just wasn't right. Made me look a bit crazy sometimes. So the old farm hat was the shape which I eventually took the hats off, because that all suited me, kept the sun up my face, and it felt a lot better. So it was the old hat that I used to work around the farm with, that style which I sort of took.
In Walk a Country Mile, we also discovered how gruelling touring life was for Slim and Joy, particularly in the first years from 1954.
Today, I feel that you couldn't begin thinking about doing the small towns on the tour that we set out on, because the population of the countryside has changed so much. There's been such a migration to the city and the big towns. And it makes me pretty sad when sometimes I drive through the places that used to be small but thriving communities, and to realise that they've slowly withered away, and that most of the people left are only just sort of holding out. The roads were bad in our early days, the travelling was hard, and in most places there was no such thing as a caravan park, but it made a difference to be starting out with optimism rather than pessimism, you know. We had plenty of heart, we had plenty of hope. I think hope kept us really going.
For us fans, that first book fulfilled our desire to know everything there was to know about Slim Dusty. However, it was a big effort for Slim, who's always been rather shy and quite a private person. For years after it was written, Walk a Country Mile bothered Slim and Joy, so in Slim's 50th anniversary year, 1996, they wrote a second book, Another Day, Another Town.
This second book goes right back to the beginning, where we opened the book where I'm walking the streets of Belfast, wondering really what I'm doing there, and I'm trying to find my roots of my people, and then I'm trying to say, what does it say to me? This was from my trip 2 years ago, and I sort of feel that it tells me to go back to Australia and do what I'd normally done. I've found out where my people came from. That's how the book opens. And then we do go back to the beginning where Slim Dusty the Kid evolved at about 10 years of age, and we go through it, and it's done in a different way. It's a more personal sort of book, and we get into a lot more detail, the battles in the early days, and losing my dad, and then being knocked back so many times by EMI, actually giving up, and then getting this great letter in 1946 when Arch Kerr said, if you come down, there's a strong possibility of a recording contract. And in the first place, of course, I knocked that back because Mum wanted me to settle down and run the farm with Dad gone. And I agonised for a week around the property, and I more or less refused it. Then I sent another telegram, and I eventually went to Sydney in 46. And, of course, as we all know, on the 19th of November, that's when I recorded the old Rain Tumble. So that's what changed my life, really. And then later on, when the Tim McNamara scene took off in Sydney, I left Kempsey, and I knew I was leaving for the last time. And we follow all the tracks of what Shorty and I, Gordon Parsons and Johnny Ashcroft and the McKean sisters and Lily Connors, all the shows we did around Sydney. And then I parted company with Tim and started to go out on my own, settled down and got married. And we only lived in the house at Epping for 8 months, and we decided to hit the road and have a try. And that trial run is still going. And then we go back to the days on the showground when the pub was released, and we go into a fair depth of some of our personal life. And it's a very in-depth book, and we're trying to answer the questions that people often say to the band. What's he really like? Is he a good bloke? Is he a bastard? Or what? And we try to answer these questions as we go along in the book. And we finish up at dear old Tamworth last year when I was on stage, and I received the award from the Country Music Association
and we had a standing ovation in the rodeo arena there, and it just finishes up with the thoughts going through my mind. And the last line of the book, I think about what my dad would have said, and what Mac Cormack would have said, and what Gordon Parsons would be thinking. And all I can remember, I think he'd say, well, you may be successful, but I still think you're a mug fisherman, you bastard. And that's the last line of the book. So it really goes through a lot in depth of what's happened.
Now, the 1979 book came at a time when your career was on a high. It was the year you went onto the Roll of Renown. And I sense that the book was really just a career overview with some of the highlights of the career.
Yeah.
This is not the same sort of book. This is the bits that weren't in the first book.
The first book was too nice. It was too pretty. Things are not that nice in real life. How really different is Slim Dusty to David Gordon Kirkpatrick? I'm trying to explain that there's two people involved there. When I'm on stage, I'm the old SD. When I'm back home in private life, I'm the other person a lot. So we've tried to explain all this.
The conclusion is pretty much the same. In 1979, after you'd been to hospital and got the all clear there, with the Roll of Renown, and I sense that things had pretty much settled with you, that you'd played fair, done good, and that people were recognising you. And I guess since then it's been more and more of the same. And I guess if anything, now 17, 18 years later, that the feeling of satisfaction must be very strong for you.
I feel very, very satisfied. I feel so much fulfilment and such gratitude to the people of Australia. And I'm not one in looking back. I'm not looking back because I want to get back to the outback and see what's happening out there. Just touring privately, getting out to meet people, and just slow down a bit as we travel and enjoy travelling without the show for a while. Maybe write some more songs. I'll probably do a bit of landscape painting, and we'll just slow down a bit from the hectic pace, but we'll still be on the road travelling out there and mixing with our friends. Be on the road travelling out there and mixing with our friends.